Welcome to Strip Cover Lit, where we squeeze the bigger picture out of literature. I'm Andrew Ford, and we're here for another poetry discussion, which will appear, of course, in two separate playlists here on the channel. Number one being the poetry discussion playlist, number two being the Emily Dickinson playlist, a playlist dedicated entirely to the greatest poet of all time. Now, the poem in question today is not one of Emily Dickinson's greater known poems, but it is one that maybe has one of the deeper truths, deeper wisdoms about it. It is a poem that is, as Emily Dickinson is in her best, fairly brief, but it's also a poem that is unlike much Emily Dickinson. It does not necessarily fall off as the poem goes on. It does not necessarily get more difficult, more challenging as the poem goes on. It's a fairly straightforward work. It is called Crumbling is Not an Instance Act, and it reads as such. Crumbling is not an instance act, a fundamental pause. Dilapidation's processes are organized decays. 'Tis first a cobweb on the soul, a cuticle of dust, a border in the axis, an elemental rust. Ruin is formal, devil's work consecutive and slow. Fail in an instant no man did, slipping is crash's law. You've heard the phrase Rome wasn't built in a day. There's a corollary to that. Rome wasn't built in a day, and it did not fall overnight. The point being that what happens, maybe Rome is sacked by the great hordes, right? There's a D on that word, YouTube. Don't count me off. But that doesn't kill everyone that ever was a Roman. It does not destroy all of the businesses and processes within the Roman Empire. It just sets everybody back a whole lot. And then, we've gotten used to this phrase. There's a supply chain. And maybe one of the popular things in Rome was, I know this isn't true, but I'm making an example. Give me a newspaper. Well, the guy who printed the newspaper was one of those individuals that was killed, and so was the guy who delivered it. So that, probably is gone. I mean, we can hire a new one, right? And he'll be trained eventually, but for now, there's just no newspaper. And that newspaper brought news, right? That newspaper brought word that, well, there's going to be troubles with food because the weather isn't all that it should be. So now the people don't stock up on their food, and a few more kind of die. Starvation, it gets them. It gets people all the time. And then one of the people who died, well, that was a school teacher. And there's no one left to teach math. So all the kids rejoiced, but then they didn't have their math and grew up without those powers. Pardon me. And that is a slow decline when there's no one left to step up into someone else's place. So the next generation is just a little bit weaker. The next generation is just a little bit less well off. The next generation has a few more problems than this generation and does not have the tools to solve it. Didn't take math, don't you know? And the funny thing is, well, it's not funny. Ontogeny recapitulates phylogeny. This is how your body works too. So, yeah, you could get away without brushing your teeth today. You could get away without doing a bit of exercise today, and probably tomorrow too. And the day after, really, I mean, no one's going to want to stand too close to you because of that morning breath for a fortnight. But are you going to lose a tooth in 2 weeks? No. No, absolutely not. But eventually those cavities will take over. Eventually, things build up. And all of a sudden, you're 40 and you have a lot of medical issues that seemingly just sprung up on you. But they did not just spring up on you. You stopped taking care of yourself a decade ago because you're silly. And I think probably we know that, right? Everyone knows you got to brush your teeth. Everybody knows a little bit of exercise is going to do you some good. Everybody knows that if you stop taking care of yourself, eventually you pay the price as far as your physical health is concerned. But that's how your brain works too. It's how your mind works. If you stop doing push-ups 5 days a week, a couple of years you won't be able to do push-ups. Your brain does the same thing. Your brain builds up just like the rest of your body. You stop using it, and it withers away. You can get it back. You can whip that brain back into shape, but it sure is a lot more painful that second time around. And do you have the wherewithal the next time? A lot of people, turns out, simply do not. So, their brain, their mental prowess withers away. It's incredible how these things happen, and you don't notice them. You never notice 1% worse. You never notice 1% better either, but 1% better comes at the 1% better comes with great toil. 1% worse is very painless. 1% worse is very easy. 1% worse is no work at all. It's no work at all. 1% worse. And it's never 2% worse or 3% worse that day. It's just the 1%. And you don't notice it. You don't notice it. You don't notice it. That's why you've got to read poetry, right? That's why we have to be here for each other, encouraging one another to read poetry, to read in general, to toil and tussle with short stories, with novels. It now, maybe I'm going too far, but this is, I think, one of the great problems with society. It really is, in my opinion. We have become lazy. And in doing so, we're just 1% worse all the time. There's no oomph left. It used to be that being strong, and I don't just mean physical strength, I mean wherewithal, I mean acumen, I mean the slow building, slow accrual of knowledge, slow building of intelligence. These sorts of things were good just for the sake of being done. And, before you get off my lawn, I think it should be observed that we care very little for those things in today's society. There are pockets for sure. These things pop up from time to time and become fads. Okay. But I think that this idea of the slow crumble around us is pervasive. So don't be part of that. That's all I have for this poetry discussion. If you like or appreciate what it is that I do here, hitting the like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other literature lovers. There's poetry on the channel every Monday. We're currently reading through Ernest Hemingway's short stories. We just got through Dubliners by James Joyce. We are reading through Carrie as we speak. And as always, guys, I hope to have you back for the next one.